Okay, we're on page 95, the third paragraph of the Shema. See if they do this. Okay, the English translation here does it right, but you have to appreciate why it's right and what it means. The strict literal reading of the Hebrew, translation of the Hebrew, is as follows. Hashem said to Moshe, saying, "Speak to the children of Israel and say to them, they shall make tzitzis." Are the alarm bells going off? Right? Ringing the alarm bells? Let's try it again. Speak to the children of Israel and say to them, they shall make tzitzis. That's not right. How would you say it? Speak to them and say to them?
To make tzitzis.
No, okay, but don't just cut out the word. Instead of saying they shall make tzitzis, it should have said?
Make tzitzis, like command.
Okay, you could say that, right? But now, answer the question here. Instead of the they, it should have written, you shall make tzitzis. Speak, say to them. Say to them. In English, you would put 2 dots and quotation marks. These are the words you should say. Here we go. I'm getting up to make a speech. They shall make tzitzis. You say, which they? Who are you talking to? You're talking to us. If you're talking to us, you'd say, you shall make tzitzis. What do you mean, they shall make tzitzis? Right? Vasu lehem tzitzit. They shall make tzitzis. Not vasitem lechem tzitzit. Vasu lehem. They shall make tzitzis for themselves.
Wrong, but if I said correctly, God speaks to Moshe, to Moses will tell them.
Yes.
So where do I say it wrong? It sounds like, okay, and tell them to make tzitzis.
But it doesn't say tell them. It says say to them.
Okay.
Tell them would be better. And indeed, that's in the English, that's what you get from the... What did the English translator do? He put in the word that. Say to them that they shall make tzitzis. That means it's not a direct quote. The that means, I'm telling you the content you should convey to them, use your own words. I don't care if you say it in Greek. I'm not telling you what words to say. But that's not what it says. It says, V'amarta lahem. You shall say to them these words. That's the wrong words. Number one. And number two, in Hebrew, there's an and. It says you should say to them, and the next word is and. You should get up. I'm ready to make my speech. Pay attention. Here's what I have to say. And you can't start with and. You can't start with and. You can't start a speech with and. And what? Right? So when you have a shift to the third person, plus a vav, I was told, that makes it indirect speech in English. With a that. But instead of direct speech, it's indirect speech. Direct means I'm telling you which words you must pronounce. And indirect means here's a content you should give to them, and I don't care how you say it. And it becomes an indirect content. Now, having said all of that, one wants to know, why would the Torah here switch to indirect content and not tell them what words to say? At least 100 times it says, say to them the following words, and here it isn't saying that. I don't know the answer to that question, but that's this simple, and that's what your English translator did here. Otherwise, the third person doesn't make sense.
Would you recommend to read the English version, although for those of us that are native language is Hebrew?
Yes, you can read it in translation. Yeah.
For the prat?
I'm sorry, what?
So would you recommend to read the English translation for the prat? I wonder why to read it at all
in English.
Yes.
I know what you're asking. For most of the people in this yeshiva, they can't read the Hebrew. It's a non-starter. Yeah. And you see that I don't always accept the English translation. So Much better to learn the Hebrew. Okay, now, they should make tzitzis for themselves on the corners of their garments. So I guess the garments have corners. Not all garments have corners. So the tzitzis only apply to garments with corners. And elsewhere it says, Arber kanfik suschem. So there's four corners. That's what you should do. Make them on the corners. And should put on the tzitzis a blue thread. Now I want to tell you a story. I was coming home from the yeshiva many years ago in a taxi, as I usually go. The taxi cab driver said, Kvod HaRav, Your Honor, the Rabbi. Did you ever notice that in this verse, there's a word that's out of place? Speak to the children of Israel and say to them that they shall make tzitzis on the corners of their garments for their generations, and you should place on the tzitzis of the corner a blue thread. Now, he's a taxi cab driver, and I'm Kvod HaRav, His Honor the Rabbi. I think, is a word out of place in this pasuk? I only said it 2,000 or 3,000 times. No, I don't know. They shall make for themselves tzitzis on the corners of their garments for their generations, and they should put a blue thread on the tzitzis. Well, he tells me, I've just come from my Orach Chaim Shir, the taxi cab driver, and he says, what about the word for their generations? L'dorosam. He said that, and the light bulb started to go off. Make tzitzis for the generations and put on blue thread. Why is for generations? In between the white and the blue, separating the white and the blue. Building a wall between the white and the blue. Shouldn't for the generations either have been at the beginning or the end, so it would apply to the whole sentence? Yeah, it should have been at the beginning or the end. And it's in the middle. So what does it tell you? It tells you the white will be for their generations and the blue won't be for their generations. The pasuk already said we're going to lose the blue. The pasuk said in the time of Moshe Rabbeinu that we're going to lose the blue. That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. No one thinks that this pasuk was written. The wildest archaeological idiot doesn't think that this pasuk was written in the 5th century CE. Obviously, for hundreds and hundreds of years, they had a tradition that the Dorosam goes on the white and not on the blue. So, very worthwhile. It's one of the many worthwhile things I have learned from taxi cab drivers in this country who are important people. Okay. Now it says, and it shall be for you tzitzis. So the question is, what's the it? In the previous pasuk you have tzitzis and a blue thread. And now it says, it shall be for you tzitzis. So you don't want to say that the tzitzis shall be tzitzis. They're already tzitzis. That's what they made them. But one understanding is putting the blue thread on also makes it into a compound tzitzis. Before it sounds like there's a tzitzis which is white, and then there's a blue thread which is a blue thread on the tzitzis. But now we're being told that the compound is also called tzitzis. Now, the word tzitzis comes from a word which means to peek out and be visible. So the idea is that there should be a visibility. It's going to be even more explicit further down in the paragraph. There should be a visibility, and there should be a visibility for both. Here there is vast symbolism. I just want to point out one thing which many people know. It's a little piece of logic in it. It says the color of the tzitzis, this kind of blue-green color, is similar to the color of the sea, And the color of the sea is similar to the color of the sky, and the color of the sky is similar to the color of the throne of glory in heaven. Okay, so I guess the idea is when you look at the tzitzis, you have to be reminded of the throne of glory in heaven. Now, why you have the two in-between steps? Just tell me that the tzitzis is similar to the throne of glory, and I'll just remember the connection. The connection isn't to connect the tzitzis to the sea and the sky, it's to get you up to the throne of glory. So Rashi already points out that when you say A is similar to B, and B is similar to C, and C is similar to D, it doesn't follow that A is similar to D at all. Because similar is not identical. If A is identical to B, and B is identical to C, and C is identical to D, then A is identical to D. Identity is transitive, but similarity is not. Say, blue-green is similar to blue, and blue is similar to turquoise, and turquoise is similar to purple, but blue-green isn't similar to purple at all. It gets a little more different each step down the way, which means, in the symbolic terms, you can't get from the tzitzis to the throne of glory unless you take the sea and the sky along with you. You can't get there directly. You don't jump out of this world to get there. You take the whole world along with you. You're connecting everything up to the top, not just you up to the top. That's a very, very significant feature of the Jewish view of the world and how the world works. We spoke about this at the end of the first paragraph of Shema. We talked about the Tefillah and the mezuzah. And we said the physical world also gets attention from us. That our active mitzvos are a way of spiritualizing and sanctifying the world as well. I told you that according to Ramchal, everything goes into the world to come, even the mosquitoes. Everything goes in. Nothing's lost. Absolute conservation of mass energy, which is the physics discovered 100 years ago, which quantum mechanics isn't exactly 100% right. It all goes along with us because it's an integrated system. We are part of that system, even though we're different in our nature from the other things in the system. So is the brain different from the nature of all the other parts of the body? That doesn't mean it's not part of the body. So here too, we are part of it, and we are responsible to elevate all of it. And this is the symbolism going from the tchelis to the throne of glory. That's one thing. And the other thing I want to tell you, the Torah said, white threads with a white string with a blue thread. What happens if somebody makes all of his tzitzis out of white, no blue? Well, you know, you're wearing them, right? So I guess it must be okay. Mishnah Menacha says, all white is okay, and all blue is okay. Lechatchila, if you want to do the mitzvah in the best possible way, you should have white and blue. But if you do it all white or all blue, you satisfy the mitzvah. Now the question arises there in the Gemara. Let's suppose you have two people. One does all white and one does all blue. Neither one is perfect. Neither one is the way it would be to do it ideally. Are they equally deficient? The all white is missing blue. The all blue is missing white. Are they equally deficient? Are the failures of equal severity or not? And if they're not, which failure is worse?
Blue.
Having all blue is worse, he says. He says that's worse. And everybody agrees with him? You say it's white. Good. Now we have a machlokes. Very good. So why do you say that's white?
Because it says Teffilah because there's so much psukim in Shema saying that you need Teffilah for seats, or at least.
I mean, these are the psukim in the Shema. We're reading them now, right? This is where the blue for the tzitzis is said. Right. That's right. Says that's what it says.
So therefore, you should have Teffilah on your seats.
That's right. You should have tzitzit. And one person has the tzitzis without.
It doesn't say Lavan or Lavan. It just says Teffilah. So therefore, it seems preferred that you would have blue on there than white.
trying to figure out what you mean. The verse here has a vision of something called tzitzis, and then a blue thread that goes on the tzitzis. That's the vision, right? So it seems clear that it's taking for granted that the tzitzis, what? The blue thread on blue thread? That your blue thread you already had as tzitzis? It doesn't sound like it. And in fact, the halacha is that the tzitzis part before the blue thread should really be like the color of the garment that's going on, or the same material as the garment that's going on. Only the tchelis has to be wool. The other ones don't have to be wool. There's a lot going on there. The Gemara, Rishonim say that the failure of having all blue is worse than the failure of having all white. And the reason is because think of the failure. Think of what's missing. Think of what's going on in the person's head with the part that's missing. A person that's all white, why do you think he would have all white and no blue? Because the blue is expensive. Chelis is expensive. It's got to be made from the chilazon. So he says, I know the mitzvah, but it's $250. That's a lot of money. Yeah. The Torah told me that I'm yotze with white, so I'm going to do white. And it's not best, but $250 is a lot of money. Person has all blue, the white costs exactly $1.62, and it's around the corner. He can't bother himself to walk down the corner and spend $1.62 to put on white. He can't bother himself to do that. That's a bizayon. Means, what difference does it make? The best way, the not best way, I don't care. Not even worth $1.62 to make the best possible tzitzis. His bizayon of the mitzvah is greater because it's so easy to do and he simply discards it. That's why it's worse. It tells you something about the way we spoke about this in other contexts before. The harder it is to do the mitzvah correctly, the less serious the failure if you do it incorrectly. When there are cases where a person is required by the Torah to die, give up his life, and he doesn't, that's considered to be a very minimal failure because it's his life. Indeed, even if it's idol worship, he won't be punished in court at all if he makes the mistake and bows to the idol because he's threatened with his life. If he succeeds in doing the mitzvah, he's a hero. If he fails, it means he fails to be a hero. Failing to be a hero is a very small failing. Failing to be the very best. See, there's some parents who are so criminal. The kid comes home with the test, and the test says 98. He says, "What about the other two?" That's criminal. Kid got a 98? No, but less than perfect doesn't count. That's criminal. It's sick, right? So failing to get 100, but failing to pass, getting 63 instead of 65, that's something. Because getting 65, especially the way exams are given today, if you sign your name, you get 50 points. Okay, back to work. So that's blue and white. Now it says, you'll see it. You'll remember the mitzvahs of Hashem, and you'll do them. So here too, I want to tell you something very important. There's a statement in Chazal that mitzvahs, tzitzis is weighed against the 612 other mitzvahs, equal weight. Put all 612 on one side and put tzitzis on the other side, even, equal weight. Now when Chazal say that, and they say it about Shabbos also, and they say it negatively about Avodah Zarah also, say it about a bunch of things. Yeah, but it can't be true for two of them, can it? Could tzitzis weigh the same as the 612, and also Shabbos by itself weigh the same as the 612? That can't be. That's an absolute contradiction. These statements in Chazal, which sound like they're universal, are very, very often meant in a particular dimension, what's called relative identity for the philosophers. Equal with respect to, not just equal across the board. You have this all the time. There are two psukim in Shmos. It says Moshe and Aaron and Aaron and Moshe. Malamed sheshkulim, that Moses and Aaron are equal. Oh yeah. Anybody who thinks that Aaron's prophecy is equal to Moses' prophecy is a heretic. Excuse me. In other words, one of the 13 principles of faith, that Moses' prophecy is unique. So it can't mean they're equal. In the context over there, it means they both played necessary roles. In the Exodus depended upon both of them. That's all. If you want a more striking example even than that, in the Song of Songs, the king speaks of his beloved, and at one point he says, Zos tamasi, this is my pure one. Tamak can mean pure. So the Medrash says, Al tikri tamasi ela ta'omasi. Don't read my pure one, read my twin. This is the creator of the universe speaking to the Jewish people. The Jewish people is my twin. That's shocking? It's not shocking. Wake up, get some coffee. That's shocking. Anything could be the twin of the creator? And in case you didn't get it, the Midrash goes on. Not I am bigger than she is, not she is bigger than I am. We're equal. Well, I hope this doesn't come as a terrible disappointment, but you are not the creator of the universe. You're not infinite. You're not beyond, transcendent, and you didn't create the universe. So, what does it mean? It means in the following respect. Because Baruch Hu set up a world, and that world is created as a project in process, and he invited us to participate in the project, and it's not going to get finished unless we play our part. We too are necessary for the perfection of the world. He does 99.99999%, and we do 0.0001%, but our part is necessary also. It's also necessary. That's the one thin degree in which we have an equality. So you have to always remember that when you talk about these kinds of general statements, they are meant in a certain respect, not in toto. Okay, so now, when the Chazal say that tzitzis, shkula, can I get kol mitzvos, 612 mitzvos, what it means is, what the pasuk does here, that via the mitzvah of tzitzis, you'll remember all of the mitzvos. And you're remembering all the mitzvahs, having them in mind, keeps you ready and prepared to do them. So this mitzvah will lead you to doing the other 612. In many respects, it's not equivalent to even one of them. There's no penalty. Let me start with this. There are various different categories of mitzvos, and one type of mitzvah is called a conditional mitzvah. It's a mitzvah you do under certain conditions, and if you don't under those conditions, you don't do it. I don't know whether Abraham ever performed the mitzvah of a mezuzah. He lived in a tent. You don't put the mezuzah on a tent, only on a house. Maybe he never did it because he never lived in a house. Certainly, the Psukim never mentioned that he lived in a house. I told you before that tzitzis go on a four-cornered garment. If you don't wear four-cornered garments, you don't put on tzitzis. Are you required to wear a four-cornered garment in order to obligate yourself in tzitzis and put on the tzitzis? No, you are not. There's no commandment to put on four-cornered garments. It's voluntary. So this tzitzis is like mezuzah. If you happen to be in the condition of wearing a four-cornered garment, then you have the requirement to put on the tzitzis. That's what creates the obligation, but no one told you have to do that. So that means that it's essentially voluntary. Conditional is a better word, but since you don't have to fulfill the condition, it comes out to be voluntary. So that certainly means it's a less important mitzvah than something like tefillin, where it doesn't depend on conditions at all. You simply have to do it. Nevertheless, and with this I'm going back to what I said about blue and white in a way. Nevertheless, the Gemara says that at a time when Rachmana litzlan, the Chodesh Baruch Hu is kiviyachol angry at the world because we're failing to live up to what he wants in some terribly deficient way, bid in the rischa, time of anger, he's makpid even on not putting on a four-cornered garment and putting tzitzis on it. Why? there was no responsibility to do it anyway. So, how can you say you held a person responsible for something he wasn't required to do? Because of the attitude. How difficult is it to put on a four-cornered garment, to buy one? In the ancient world, standard garments were just a rectangular piece of cloth with a hole in the middle for your head. You put it on, draped it over, you put a belt around it, and that was your garment. Everybody wore tzitzis. Today, the clothes styles aren't like that. But for most people, to go to the store and buy a four-cornered garment, it costs less money than one night out at a restaurant. You didn't even bother to get a four-cornered garment so as to be able to do the voluntary mitzvah. Yeah, the one that you didn't have to do. You didn't even bother at a time when God is angry at the way for that cavalier attitude. So it's a mitzvah. So what? I don't have to do it. For that cavalier attitude, a person can be Rahman held responsible and held liable. So there's a Nesiva Shalom who says that when you do a mitzvah that you're obligated to do, what do you show? The Kodesh Baruch Hu says, I'm ordering you to do it. If you do it, you'll be rewarded, and if you don't do it, you'll be punished. As opposed to a voluntary mitzvah, I'm inviting you. If you do it, you'll be rewarded, but you don't have to. There's a little difference because it's conditional, but it's the same general idea. A person who does a required mitzvah, what's called mitzvah v'oseh, shows that he's obedient. He's dutiful. He fulfills his responsibilities. That's what's shown. There might be other things there, but what's shown by his performance is duty and obedience and responsibility. When a person volunteers to do a mitzvah, he's showing something else. That the mitzvah is precious to him. He feels the preciousness of the opportunity. He wants to extend himself to do the mitzvah. Now, I'm going to talk about this tonight, but I have to put it on record now. Of the two, duty and obedience and obligatory are more important. They're more important. You get more reward for that. They take precedence. Precisely because there's less of you and more of him in it. I'm doing his will. And the voluntary ones are less important. They're less important because I'm acting out my good character. I'm showing my nobility. I'm showing my generosity. There's much more of me in it. That's why it's less important. But you can't ignore it entirely. Because if you ignore it entirely, then you do ignore those good midos that would lead you to do it. So that the idea that I fulfill my responsibilities, but not a jot more, nothing more. That's all. I'm not volunteering for anything. That attitude is a negative attitude towards the opportunity of doing mitzvos, and that too is something a person is responsible for. Not an equal measure of obedience, but it's something he's responsible for. So that's the subtle position that a mitzvah like tzitzis takes up in our performance. Different communities within the Jewish people have accepted the idea of wearing tzitzis in different ways, to different extents. And if you see a person who's not wearing tzitzis, you cannot criticize him. You cannot say that he's done something wrong or he's not really frum. It's not true. It's not true. You can talk about communities which have made it into like a custom to wear tzitzis on various things. Many people don't wear tzitzis while they're sleeping. Some people do. That's halachically tricky, but some do. So it is a variety of performances is appropriate, but still, the idea of that's why, for example, when you go to daven, when you're married, for an Ashkenazi, if you're a poor Ashkenazi, you do when you're married. If you're lucky Sephardi, you can do it from the time you're 13. And some of the Yekkes do it from the time you're 13. And the excuse for the Ashkenazim is not easy to understand. The Gemara says that when you're married, you cover your head in the tzitzis with the talus. If I read that Gemara, On my own, I would say, okay, so when you're married, you don't cover your head. Doesn't mean you don't wear the tallis, just that you don't cover your head. No, covering your head is a symbol for wearing the whole garment. Well, maybe yes, maybe no. At any rate, the idea of honoring prayer by having a special tzitzis garment to wear to do the mitzvah of tzitzis in a fine fashion in order to honor the prayers, because this is a mitzvah that has its own character, has its own preciousness, even though it's not obligatory. Yeah, you had a question? Okay.
What is the significance of us saying this?
Saying what? Sorry?
What is the significance of us having to say this twice a day? This whole concept.
The real significance comes in the last verse, as you'll see, because you're supposed to mention the Exodus from Egypt twice.
But if that would be the case, then it would just say the last verse. But it says the whole thing.
Gee, I never usually put it that way. That's a very nice thought. I usually say, if you're going to remind yourself of the Exodus, how about reading from the book of Exodus? I mean, Exodus, the Ksher Shavah, it's Exodus. Why did I read from the book of Exodus? Why read this? Whose last verse is about the Exodus. All the rest of it is about tzitzis. So there are pshat in the white tzitzis could be made relevant and so on and so on. I have my own explanation. But you're asking a different question. If you're going to do it, why not do it with the last verse only? That's a nice thought. Some reason to read the whole thing? I don't know. I didn't think of that alternative. They say something. I think maybe something has to do with the number of words, maybe. There's 248 words or something. Yeah. I'll have to ask. Maybe I knew an answer, but I've forgotten. It's a nice question. Okay, so now, urisemoso, should see them. Must you see them? Certainly sounds like it. It's giving you instructions, right? Okay, so skip to the next sentence. In order that you should remember and do all the mitzvos and be holy to Hashem your God, to your God. So now that's really redundant. This verse said, see them, remember all the mitzvos and do them. And the next verse says, in order that you should remember and do them. Right? It's the same thing twice. Only the second verse doesn't say to see. It just says you should remember and do. And this is one way that they answer a question, does a blind person have to put on tzitzis? Since he can't do the urisem oso part, maybe that means, since he can't do the seeing part, he shouldn't have to put on tzitzis. And the answer is he does have to put on tzitzis. That's one of the reasons why it's repeated. Because that means, preferably, you should remember by seeing them. But if you don't see them, you're still required to remember, you're still required to wear them. And that's why you can wear them inside your garments. You don't have to have them out where they're visible. It's preferable, but it's not necessary. Okay, now it says, Los asuru, don't. Well, how do they translate it here? That you may see the and not okay. They put explore after your heart and after your eyes. That's very clever. That's very clever. Do they explain? Tzitzis? Yeah. So they quote the Rashi in these footnotes. The eye sees, the heart covets, and the body sins, which we'll talk about. That's Rashi. But those words in Rashi don't explain why they chose the word explore for Lo Sasuru. So there's a Malbim, a wonderful Malbim, not that the other ones aren't wonderful. This is wonderful that I understand this one. In Parashat Shlach, Moshe Rabbeinu sends spies up to the land of Israel to spy it out. As you know, they come back with a bad report. We can't conquer them, and the people are dispirited. They want to go back to Egypt. That's why they had to spend the rest of the 40 years in the wilderness. There, points out the Malbim, the only verb that's used for describing the spying is latur, with a suf, like here it is. Suf, vav, reish. There are many words in Hebrew for spies. One is meraglim, leragel, another is lachpor, and latur. Here it's only latur. What's the difference in the meaning of those different verbs for spying? What kind of spying are we talking about here? So the Malbim proves that latur means to evaluate. Not to plan a military strategy, but to evaluate. And he points out that each tribe sent one member, and he was a Nasi. Now, sometimes they translate Nasi as prince, and if it's written in singular, you think like there's a king and a prince. But no, Nasi means a kind of communal leader, and they could have several in the tribe fulfilling different functions. But it's got to be an important person, someone who's a leader of and represents the whole tribe. So the Malbim asks, why are you choosing them as spies? Do they have any military training? Do you really need 12 spies, one from each tribe, to go and bring back a military report? And what happened when Joshua actually conquered the land of Israel? Did he send one person from each tribe, each one of them a Nasi? No, he sent two people who could bring back a military report. Says the Malbim, the whole purpose of the exercise was that each tribe should know that one of its representatives that has its interests at heart came back and said, yes, the piece of land that's assigned to you is good for us. It's assigned to us is good for us. They wanted an evaluation. That was their purpose. And they were told to see what the land is like, what the people are like, whether they're strong or not. Meaning, does the land support numerous, strong people? When they come back and they give the report to the people, everything they say is a fulfillment of their mission, except for one word. They say, these people were living here and those people are living there, and the land is very plentiful, and it produces great fruit. They brought back samples of the fruit. And it says, these nations live here and these nations live here, and they're strong nations. All of that was fine. But they added one word, ephes. And ephes doesn't just mean but, as it has in some translations. The word ephes means zero. The land is a beautiful land, productive land, and it's worthless to us because we can't conquer them. That word ephes killed it. Because then they're making a remark about the military situation. They weren't sent to do that. That wasn't their charge. Their charge was to bring back an evaluative report. Okay. That's the beginning of Parshas Shlach. And as I said, the verb there is Taf Vav Reish. This paragraph that we're reading now is the end of Parshas Shlach, the seventh Parsha. And in this little paragraph it says Lo Sasuru. And even though the Malbim doesn't say it there, but it's quite obvious, the word Lo Sasuru means don't do what spies do, the spies that were sent by Moshe to evaluate. They were sent to evaluate. That's what the Torah is telling you not to do. Don't evaluate. Don't use your eyes to evaluate. What should you use? And don't use your heart to evaluate. Some translations here make a terrible mistake. They write, don't turn aside, as if it were written with a saf, with a samach. It's not written with a samach. It's written with a saf. It means what you see with your eyes and what you feel with your heart is not sufficient to evaluate the true value of things. Actually, the only thing that can give you the value of things is Torah. It has to be evaluated from the point of view of Torah. So that's what the pasuk is telling you not to do. Now, the pasuk says, don't go after your heart and don't go after your eyes. So as your helpful, friendly Art Scroll commentary at the bottom says, quoting from Rashi, the eye sees, the heart covets, and the body sins. You notice some interesting relationship between what Rashi says and what the verse says? It's the opposite order. The verse says heart first and eyes second. Rashi says eyes first and heart second. That ought to bother you. Rashi's telling you pshat. So I asked this of Rav Moshe Pindris, who was a Malamed who was here when I came 42 years ago, and he's still here. And he told me sometimes in Chumash where you have A and B is the cause of A, not A is the cause of B. The order isn't always that way. He gave me a couple of examples. So Rashi is certainly within the understanding of pshat when it says don't go after your heart, don't go after your eyes, it means don't go after your heart which is stimulated by your eyes seeing something and then came to desire it. Because the eye is the cause. You could, and it's certainly an acceptable way to say pshat. But there's another way to say the pshat, which works the opposite way also. Because what you see is determined in large part by what you want, what you're thinking about, what preoccupies you. So that the heart is first, and the eyes are an outcome of what the heart wants. If the heart won't be evaluating on its own, the eyes won't notice it. They won't see it. Rav Dessler points this out in one of his essays. So you give a newspaper to 10 different people, tell them to read all the way through. An hour later, and you ask about each section. What did it say in the sports section? What did it say in the politics section? What did it say in the economic section? Different people will remember different things, even though everyone read every word. Because a person who's interested in sports will remember the sports. A person who's interested in the economics will remember the economics. Your interests determine, to a great extent, what you see. This was one of the few valuable things in Jean-Paul Sartre, being in nothingness, which starts off with the idea that when you're looking for something, so in your mind, everything is background for it. The red book with the sticker on the front. So you're looking around. You won't see a blue book. You won't see a tricycle in the corner of the room. You're looking for the red book. So everything is just stuff which you have to distinguish from the red book you're looking for. Proofreading, you can read about this in books of ancient history. They used to pay people to take typed text and check the spelling. See, now you have a spell check, which sometimes gets you wrong because you didn't mean that word, but okay, right? And they found people had to be specially trained to spell check because they read what they expected to see. They didn't read what was on the page, and they didn't notice mistakes in spelling. They had to stop and sometimes read backwards or read down so that you don't have the context of the sentence, so you're not pre-programmed to see what you expect to see. So the heart's interests determine sometimes what the eye sees. So that could be a reason why heart comes first here. Shall I try this for you? I don't know if you've seen this, but if you haven't, it's worth seeing. I don't know if I should erase this. I'll just write it here. What did I write?
Sorry.
What did I write?
Where is
I'm the spring.
Paris in the spring.
Ah.
No, I didn't. Look at it again.
I am. It says.
I'm the spring.
Yeah.
Spring.
Paris in the spring. You didn't see the twice, did you? No. It's written there. It's right on the board. What do you mean? I didn't hide it. You just didn't see it. Because you expected, well, it's Paris in the spring.
No, we also expected the trick, and we still
And even so, you didn't see it. Isn't that a great thing? That shows you that you see what you expect to see.
Rob, just to make sure I understood you correctly. So, see what expect to see within the options. So it's not seeing something which is not there in the picture. So I choose what to see in a picture, and each person see a different thing which is in the same picture.
Yeah, I'm not talking about hallucinating. I'm not talking about seeing something that's not there. I'm talking about missing something.
Seeing in a sense.
So now, there's a famous story about Rashi that he was walking someplace. I guess he came around a corner, and as he came to the corner, a French noblewoman was riding by on a horse, and he was startled, and he looked, and he saw her, and then he wondered why that happened to him. And later on, when he came to describe the Big Day Kahuna, the clothes of the Kohanim, there is a garment which is like a skirt, and he says so. And that because he said, if I saw it, and to write about the garment, of course they didn't have pictures to use. He used that he was living in France, and this is what a French noblewoman would wear. So he used it, but it's not the sort of thing. Some people just don't notice things. When I taught that Rav Dessler, I'll speak about my own case. I lived off campus for my junior and senior year of college, and I used to walk to the campus and walk back. And when I got married, my first wife, she said to me, by the way, what is there between your apartment and the campus? I said, I don't know. I don't know what there is. It's houses? Is there a parking lot? Is there a store? I don't know. Because I was preoccupied with things I was thinking about, but I just didn't notice. Couldn't tell her. Well, she took it upon herself to correct that. She did a good job. I noticed. I learned to notice a lot of things that I didn't notice before because my mind wasn't on it. I couldn't remember it. So this idea of not evaluating after your heart, after your eyes, to know that the eyes provide, like Rashi says, the material for the heart to evaluate and can lead to the wrong action. And the heart's predispositions determine, in part, what the eye sees. Both of them influence the other. Both of them interact. And that's contained in the verse. Okay, Mr. Hashem, we'll finish it up tomorrow.